Good morning. We're going to learn Tractate Shabbos, page 81. We are holding in the 8th chapter. The name of the chapter is Hamoitzi Yain. Moitzi Yain. Good morning, Pinchas.
Hi, Pinchas.
The Mishnah continues to list minimum amounts for substances with respect to liability for carrying them.
Sharon, how you feeling?
For carrying them out on the Shabbos. So etzem, if one carries but bone, carrying a bone. Why? Kedei lasos tavod. He is liable if he takes out enough to make a spoon. Good morning, David. So he takes a bone to make a spoon out of it. He carves it to make a spoon. And Rabbi Yehuda says he wants to make chof. What is chof? Enough to make a lock from it. Lock. Schuchis, glass, enough to scrape the head of a weaver's
pick
with it. It says in number 3, the warp threads of a loom would sometimes become entangled. The weaver had a woolen pick. Weaver is the person who would weave. Had a wooden pick which he would insert between the threads to separate and align them. The pick had a pointed head which would be kept sharp by scraping it with glass. That's how they would sharpen it, scrape it with glass. Schuchis glass, or kedeligo b'rosh hakarka, enough to scrape the weavers. So he's taking out the glass to sharpen this pointy metal piece for the weavers, for the weaver. Soil or even a pebble or a stone, large enough to throw at a bird. Large enough to throw at an animal. The Gemara notes that a lock of bone requires more bone than does a spoon. Right, we said two options. One, to either he takes out the bone to make a lock out of it, or he takes out the bone to make a spoon out of it. So he says he needs a bigger. No, but he's only taking it out. He didn't do it yet. The thing is that to make a lock, he needs more bone than to make a spoon. Okay? So let's see. So we're trying to figure out the minimum amount of substance that makes him liable, right?
Okay.
What's the minimum amount? Does enough to make a spoon, or enough to make, or less than a spoon, or enough to make a lock? So remember the Shura Rabbi Yehuda Nofish. Do you mean to say that the measurement of Rabbi Yehuda is greater? Rabbi Yehuda says enough to scrape the head of a weaver's pick with it. No, to make a lock from it. So should we say that the measurement of Rabbi Yehuda is greater because it takes more bone? So really Rabbi Yehuda is more makel, is more lenient, because you need to take a bigger bone in order to be liable. If you took a bone the size that you can only make a spoon with it, then it's not you're not liable according to Rabbi Yehuda. Only if you can make a lock from it, then you become liable. So that's what the Gemara says. Do you mean to say that the measurement of Rabbi Yehuda is greater? But we already know, where we have established that in disputes of this nature, the measurement of the rabbi is generally greater. And Rabbi Yehuda usually holds the most stringent position. So how could it be that Rabbi Yehuda over here is more lenient? We already established that Rabbi Yehuda is more stringent. Rabbi Yehuda fixes the minimum at enough bone to make the teeth of a lock. his measure is indeed smaller than that of the rabbis. The Gemara cites a brisa that teaches laws relating to the teeth of locks. Tanu Rabbanon chapei poisachas toher, and the teeth of a lock are toher. Kivon b'poisachas, if one fixed them to a lock, tamein, they are tameh. These laws apply to the locks of utensils such as chests, v'shel gal. But if the locks are those of a gate, even if he fixed them into the door, ukvon b'masmerim, and secured them with nails, tehoir, and they are toher. For anything that is attached to the ground is treated like the ground, and thus cannot contract tumah. Schuchis, kedei ligur, by glass enough to scrape the head of a weaver's pick with it. Meaning that if you took out that glass on Shabbos, this amount that would be sufficient to make you liable. Obviously, a place there's no eruv. Tanas schuchis, a brisa taught glass, kedei liftzah bo shnei nim keachas, enough to cut two warp threads from the loom at once, to entangle the threads. So you took out a glass that is capable of cutting two threads in one shot. Schroir or even kedei lizruk boif, a pebble or a stone large enough to throw at a bird. Again, this is trying to figure out the minimum amounts that someone would be liable taking out on Shabbos. Rabbi Lozo says large enough to throw at an animal. And the stone or pebble must be large enough that the animal feels it when it is thrown at it. When it is thrown at it. And how much is its measurement? How heavy must the stone be? The stone must be the weight of 10 zuz. The Gemara discusses the laws that apply to other types of stones. Zunin levei al levei midrasho. Zunin came into the studio. Zunin, the name of a person. Omar lu Rabbi says, my rabbis, avonim shebeis stones which were used for the bathroom. Back then they used a certain type of stones for as instead of toilet paper. Shurun b'chama, what is their measurement? Omuloi kazayis ke'ego zuchabesa. They replied to him, the three stones, the first the size of an olive, the second the size of a nut, and the third the size of an egg. So olive, nut, and egg. Omarlu, he said to them, v'chitu toni yachnis, and shall he bring a balanced scale in with him as well to ascertain the exact weight of each stone? Nimnu v'gomu v'lo. After discussion, they counted the proponents of each divergent view and concluded that the measure is a handful. So taking a handful, the precise number or size of the stones is not fixed. The permit extends to as many stones as one carries in his hand, regardless of number or size. That's the Nimnu V'Gamlu, that's the conclusion. Tanya Rabbi Yossi says, so we have the three measurements over here of olive, nut, and egg. Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rabbi Yossi, also said, in the name of his father, he may bring in a handful of stone. Handful of stones. One is permitted to bring these sharp-sided stones into the bathroom with him on the Shabbos. And how much is their measurement? Rabbi Meir says the size of a nut. Rabbi Yehuda says the size of an egg. Just as there is a dispute here in the Brisa, concerning the size of stones, so too is there a similar dispute concerning the minimum size of an esrog. What was the machlokes regarding esrog?
22.
It says in 22, the Mishnah in Tractate Sukkah recounts a dispute concerning the minimum size for an esrog, the citron, which is one of the 4 species that one must take in hand during the festival of Sukkot. Rabbi Meir holds that an esrog must be at least the size of a nut. Rabbi Yehuda holds that it must be at least the size of an egg. So here's a machlokes about the size of a nut and an egg. Also must nisi nocha brayso. But the dispute there concerning the esrog is recorded in the Mishnah, which is well known. Nocha brayso, while the dispute here is recorded in the brayso, which is not as well known. Why should Rafam cite the brayso to shed light on the Mishnah? Ela machlokes be'esrog ka machlokes kan. Just as there is a dispute concerning the minimum size of an esrog, so too there is a similar dispute here in the brayso. Amar Buddha valo es hapayis, but he may not take a pious. The Gemara says, what is pious? My pious? Amar bizer karshine bavloyoso, pebbles of Babylonian earth. The earth in Babylonia, the earth was very moist and tended to form pebble shapes, pebbles or pebble-shaped clumps. Abuda teaches that one may not take such clumps for the purpose of wiping oneself, for they cannot be used for this purpose, as they will crumble. They may not be handled on the Shabbos. Amar Rava also mashma b'tzov Shabbos. It is forbidden to manipulate with a pebble in order to open the rectum on the Shabbos, in a manner that he would manipulate it during the week. Mazutra challenges swallowing listakin. Shall he then endanger himself? Delaying elimination poses a serious health hazard.
Right, that was the obvious question.
Elimination?
You can't go.
I know, but I thought the word elimination is to eliminate something.
You are eliminating something.
You're eliminating
the waste.
Right, you're not allowing it to go.
So it's that's why we have the bracha. We say Asher Yatzer. If one opening is closed, you're in big trouble.
Rava did not mean that one should not attempt to open the rectum at all. It merely meant that it should be done in an unusual manner, like b'shinui kalach riyad. If there is a place which is set aside for a bathroom, he may bring in a handful of stones. But if the place is not set aside for a bathroom, one may only bring a stone the size of a knot, which is a compromise between the size of the sizes mentioned above, olive and egg. If one has a stone that was used as a pestle for a small mortar for spices, if there is testimony upon it, if it bears traces of previous use for wiping, it is permitted to take it on the Shabbos. Rav Ashi's ruling implied that one may wipe himself with a previously used stone. Meisivei Asor Dvorim Mevin Esodom Lidei Tachtonius. 10 practices bring a man to have hemorrhoids. Ve'eluhen, and these are they: Ha'echel alikonim, one who eats the leaves of reeds; Ve'ale gifonim, the leaves of grapevines; Ve'lule gifonim, or the shoots of grapevines; Umorige v'heima beloi melach, or the ridged portions of an animal; What's the ridged portions of an animal? So it says in 37, those portions of the animal flesh that are ridged rather than smooth. These include the tongue, which is covered with a thick ridged membrane, the throat, and the lining of the stomach. So he would suffer from hemorrhoids of eating those things. I guess with the tongue you can
continue. It says without adding salt.
Shida shel dag, and one who eats the backbone of a fish. V'dog moliach shel bishel kol tzok, or a salted fish that was not completely cooked. So sushi is included. It's not completely cooked.
No, okay.
V'ashet shimri yain, and one who drinks the lees of wine. It's the sediments. V'amekaneach b'sidiv chas, one who wipes himself with lime or with a shard of pottery. Or one who wipes himself with a pebble that his fellow had previously wiped with. Those who say, or add to the list, one who hangs himself. What does it mean, hang himself while using the bathroom?
Yeah, 39.
He does not sit. He squats but suspends himself without resting his lower body on a utensil.
Yeah, that can mess you up.
It's to be in a very good shape to do that, right?
You're not, I don't know.
Lei Kashya, the Gemara says, so what's the problem? The Baisa clearly states that one should not wipe himself with a stone previously used by his fellow. How come it's listed over here? Gemara says, Lei Kashya, Abelach Habiyovish. This Baisa speaks of a stone bearing moist traces of a previous use. This ruling of Ravashi speaks of a previously used stone that is dry. One speaks about only one side, but here the Baisa forbids using it because it's dirty from two sides. Or you can say it was his own previously used, and that's why it would be permitted. Over here it's speaking about his fellow, and it will be prohibited. If rains descended upon the previously used stone, venitash tishu, and the traces were smeared. Now, what is the law? Does the stone lose its status as a wiping stone or not? If the mark is still discernible, muta. It says in 45, for since the markings of the excrement remain, the stone will be considered repulsive and will no longer be used as a spice pestle. Its new status as a wiping stone is preserved.
Yay.
This is applied to this time where there's a shortage of papers.
When the pandemic first started, they had us run on toilet paper. They were starting to push the bidets. All right, next. Sorry, but since it was kind of connected to this, I threw it out there.
I think it's the best thing for a clean body is the bidet.
Yeah, that's the latest thing.
But it's an old thing. It's nothing.
It is an old thing. It's a European thing. I wasn't used to it. You see it if you go to a hotel.
Right. Rav Chisda. Rabbi Shila inquired of Rav Chisda, what is the law concerning whether one is permitted to carry the stone with him to his roof? If he wishes to go to the bathroom that is in the roof. Human dignity is so great that it even suspends a prohibition of the Torah. Therefore, one would be allowed to take stones up to his roof for this purpose. That's an unbelievable statement, that dignity, human dignity is so great that it even suspends a prohibition of the Torah.
About carrying.
The Torah, it doesn't say which prohibition, it says a general thing. Let's see, it says in number 2, the Torah warns one who finds a lost article, you may not ignore it. That is, he may not excuse himself from returning the lost object to its owner. You have to give it back. However, the Torah also states you should not see and ignore it. What does it mean? It's in the Baba Metzia. So in Baba Metzia, it expounds on it. It says the final phrase of this verse, as if it were standing alone, and derives that there are occasions when the finder may excuse himself. For example, if the finder is a Torah scholar, he is exempt from the prohibition against ignoring the lost object when the involvement in returning it does not befit his status. Remember, a big rabbi, he sees something in the street, imagine he starts schlepping it to give it to you. You lost your donkey. So now this big rabbi is going to come and start taking the donkey back to your house. It's not befit his status. Then is the instance of human dignity suspending a Torah prohibition.
So the dignity of the Torah scholar is compromised by schlepping like you said, the donkey back to somebody's house. So the dignity is like being able to take care of your personal needs.
Right.
Supersedes other things.
Yeah, otherwise the person might be degraded.
Right. I understand. I was just verbalizing it.
So Yossi Mereimar v'komer lo shmait. So Mereimar was sitting and he related this teaching. Eisi Ravina Lemei Ravina challenged Mereimar from the following. He says, a person may take a splinter of wood from chips of wood that are laying on the ground before. Why? To clean between his teeth, using it as a toothpick. The sages say, he may not take his splinter except from wood that is laying in the crib of an animal. For this brisa, it would seem that according to the sages, even in a situation where there is a question of human dignity, one may not handle objects that are muktzah. Why then may one take stones up to the roof? The animals have a crib. I guess it's where the food is, their straw is placed. So he said he may not take a splinter except from wood that is laying in the crib of the animal. It says in number 5, chips of wood that lie in the crib of an animal are prepared for use before the Shabbos as an animal fodder. Thus they may be used for toothpicks as well. Now, is this a comparison? Some there taking a splinter from wood that was designated as toothpick, as a toothpick, is forbidden because Adam kaveh mokum l'seuda. A person designates a specific place for his meal, and he should have prepared toothpicks beforehand. Not to start making toothpicks on Shabbos, he should have prepared it beforehand. Here, however, one cannot be expected to prepare stones beforehand. Does one designate a specific place for his bathroom? It is impossible to predict where one will relieve himself. The sages permitted the carrying of stones in all circumstances because of their concern for human dignity. It is forbidden for one to relieve himself in a freshly plowed field on the Shabbos. My time. What is the reason? Mishum davsho. Because if you would say because of its treading upon the freshly plowed furrows, this cannot be. Afilu b'cholam, even during the week as well, you should not do it. For this concern would apply during the week as well. And Ravuna only prohibits it on Shabbos. And if you would say rather that it is forbidden because of grasses that are growing on stones that are in the field, due to the concern that one will wipe himself with such stones and detach the grass. A stone upon which grass has grown, it is permitted to wipe with it, even though doing so it may cause the grasses to be detached. But one who intentionally detaches the grass from it on the Shabbos is liable to a chatas offering. Ella, rather, Rav Huna prohibits a person to relieve himself in freshly plowed field on the Shabbos. Perhaps he will take a stone from above the ridge of a furrow, and after using it, he will throw it below into a hole. And he will be liable for this act of filling the hole, because of that which Rabbi stated, if one had a hole and he filled it in. If the hole was in a house, he is liable on account of building. If the hole was in a field, he is liable on account of plowing.
So where's he supposed to go? He can't go in the house, he can't go into the field.
Let's see. Gufa, the Gemara says, Amar Rish Lakish. So Shaluba Sovim, stone upon which grass has grown, it is permitted to wipe with it. But one who intentionally detached the grass from it on the Shabbos is liable to chatas. This perforated flower pot may be carried about on the Shabbos, and we do not consider moving it as detaching the plant growing in it. For Rish Lakish permits picking up a stone with grass growing on it, and does not forbid this as detaching. Accordingly, he would permit the moving of the flower pot as well. Maski for Av Kahana challenged this conclusion. If the sages said that one may move such a stone in the case of pressing need, would say that this is. They would say that this. They would say this in a case where there is no pressing need. Perhaps not. Moving a perforated flower pot may still be forbidden. Amar Abai parpisa oil v'osol leodon. Perforated flower pot that is hole in the bottom. Since it has come into our hands, lema beimilta. Let us say something about it. Amunach al gabe karka. If it was resting on the ground, v'nichal al gabe seidos, and he lifted it up and set it down, placed it on top of his pegs. Mechayev mishum toile, she is liable on account of detaching. Why? Because always the roots are coming out and are connected to the ground. So when you pull out the flower pot from the ground, you're detaching it. But if it was resting on the pegs, when you took it from the pegs to put it on the ground, he's liable for something else. He's liable mishum noitea. So one is liable because of detaching, if he takes it off the ground to place it on the pegs, and if he takes it from the pegs and put it on the ground, he's liable because he is planting, he is noitea. It is forbidden to wipe oneself with a pottery shard on the Shabbos because of danger inherent using a shed. Even during the week it's forbidden. Because of witchcraft, even during the week. Rather, on account of the cutting of the hairs near the rectal opening. But it's an unintentional act and should not be forbidden. A great man has said this thing. Name of a time, let us state the reason for it. In truth, Rabbi Yochanan meant as follows. It need not to be said that it is forbidden to wipe oneself with a shard during the week, for stones are readily available, and the sages had no reason to permit the use of shards of Rabbi Shabbos. But on the Shabbos, when allowing one to wipe with a stone involves relaxing the muktzah prohibition, I might have thought that since the shard has the status of a utensil, it would be better to use the shard. Kamashma Rabbi Yochanan therefore informs us that using the shard is forbidden even on the Shabbos. Rava Master Mishum Ashor Astim, Rava taught it, the rationale for Rabbi Yochanan prohibition is being on account of the cutting of hairs near the rectal area. And he had the following difficulty reconciling this ruling of Rabbi Yochanan with another ruling of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, "We're not allowed to use. It is forbidden to wipe oneself with a shard on the Shabbos." Also, we see from it that it's dovo shemiskaven, unintended act is forbidden as well. For example, the cutting of hair. The halacha follows the view of an anonymous Mishnah Utinan. A Nazir may rub the hair of his head, and he may disentangle the hairs by hand, but he may not comb them. The anonymous, why? Because we are concerned that he might pull hair. So this anonymous Mishnah holds that something that is unintended is permitted. Thus Rabbi Yochanan should permit the use of a shard. Rather, the clear resolution is that Rav Nosson bar Oishaya.
Next comes another question, obvious question.
Mike Shofim, the Gemara says, what is the connection between shard of clay to kshafim? Pottery shard to witchcraft. Is like the incident where Rav Chisda and Rabba Baravua or Rabba Barhuna were traveling on a boat. So a certain noble woman said to them, Osan v'adaychu, take me with you. She wanted to go along with them, but they did not take her. So she recited a spell of witchcraft, and immobilized the boat. The spell held the boat in place and did not allow it to move. But the sages recited a spell to counter the witchcraft. The sages, obviously, it says in 41, would not practice witchcraft. Rather, they made use of a spell created by the holy name of God. Alternatively, they were also adept at the sorcerer spells, and they were permitted to use them in order to save themselves. That's a different interpretation. Anyhow, so they said something, and Shalyua, and they released the boat, and the boat continued traveling. Amar lehu, so the noble woman said to them in exasperation, I guess she was
trying to get him.
My Eved Lechu, what can I do to you? That you do not wipe yourself with a shard, so therefore the spell did not work on you. And you do not kill a louse while it is on your clothing. And you do not pull out a vegetable from the bundle that the gardener has tied and eat it. From this incident, we can see that if one wipes himself with a shard, he leaves himself susceptible to witchcraft. We'll continue, God willing, tomorrow.